Hello, this is Lesson 5, Part 4, Grief. Sympathy, empathy, and compassion are emotions that we can display towards our pet owners, which help to increase the support services that we offer in the clinic. I like to tell my students to think of sympathy, empathy, and compassion as services that we provide. Although they are services that we don't itemize on a bill, they are still services that we provide to our pet owner. And it's important that we are offering all three of these as services during grief and loss support circumstances. Sympathy is being able to be sensitive to a person's emotional needs or the feelings that they're experiencing. Empathy is being able to put yourself in their shoes and being able to experience their emotion by thinking of the ways that this similar situation might affect you. Compassion is the actions that we have or the awareness to alleviate stress from one of our pet owners. So for example, if somebody is crying in an exam room, you can be compassionate enough to push a Kleenex box towards them. Or if they are alone in an exam room, you can be compassionate to put your arm around them or give them a hug if that's what their body language is telling you that they might need. Being willing to listen is being a compassionate support service that we can offer. There is a video link at the bottom of this slide here that is just kind of a little fun comic on the difference between sympathy and empathy. I strongly encourage you to review the video. As veterinary professionals, I feel like we are more aware of the impact that losing a pet can have. A loss of any kind can produce grief, can result in grief, and grief can be very profound depending on the type of loss that someone is experiencing. What is important for us to remember is that no one needs permission to mourn, and everyone's grief is different. So everybody grieves differently. One of the things that I was astounded by when I first started working in the end-of-life care facility is the number of people who told me that losing a pet was worse than losing their best friend, or worse than losing a sibling, or worse than losing their parent even. And it's of course going to depend on the type of relationship that they had with those human beings in their life, but what we need to remember is that animals are a part of our life. Our family grows up, grows away, we work, we don't spend 100% of our time at home, but our animals, they are part of our house. They're part of our day-to-day life. They become a habit in our life. I often relay the story of walking outside with my son to take out the garbage, and the dog came with us. And my husband was outside working on the car, and we left the dog with my husband. And when my son and I walked back in the house, we opened the door, and my son went, "Oh, it's so weird without the dog running up to the door." And he was right. We're so used to, we're conditioned to having the dog run to the door, having her tail wagging, having her be so happy to see us whenever we enter the house, that when she's gone, those feelings are very profound, and it's very empty in the house. So we need to remember that our animals become part of our house. They become part of the sounds of our house. We're used to them being on the couches with us. We're used to them being by our feet. So when they are no longer there, the grief that people experience when they lose a pet is pretty significant. Grief cannot be ranked. So one thing that society tells us, Society tells us it's not okay to mourn the loss of a pet as if you were mourning the loss of a person. But what we know about grief is that that is not true. Nobody needs permission to mourn. Everybody's grief is different depending on the relationship that they had with the person or thing or being that is lost. And grief cannot be ranked. There is no type of grief that is worse for somebody when we compare it to somebody else's grief. I could be just as sad and upset and irritated about the loss of my flash drive as I could about the loss of my pet, depending on how significant that loss is to me personally. Active mourning allows a person to have positive movement forward, so we need to be able to help our pet owners establish what the area for new normal is in their life. When a pet is lost, it is now normal that that pet will not come to the door. That's an adjustment that pet owners need to make. So we need to recognize that grief is real, loss is real, and that these emotions can be very significant for our pet owners. I think what is often not considered is that once we experience a loss, there's no emotional process that we can go through that will get rid of that loss. Once a loss occurs, that loss becomes part of our life, and then we make adjustments to keep going. So grief does become part of life. It might change how we see grief, how we manage grief, how we handle grief can change through time, but it doesn't go away. That loss doesn't become absent as time moves on. Veterinary staff have an understanding of pet loss as opposed to society. When people lose their animal, they're going to go back to work the next day, and people are going to tell them, it was just a cat. Oh, get another cat. What's the big deal? It was just an animal. Veterinary professionals have the ability to make this a better experience for our pet owners. We need to be calling them and sending them cards and letting them know that we haven't forgotten that loss is significant to them, because the rest of society life is going to continue going on as it does. So we need to make sure that we are being continually supportive of our pet owners when they lose an animal.